Let me just do a brief introduction on Mike. Mike, it's been some time since we know each other, and I'm glad to have you as our guest speaker. But Mike has been in the industry for more than 10 years, and currently is a managing director of New Leaf Technology, which is a leading learning technologies and solution provider in South Africa. And I do know that they also have quite a substantial global footprint. During this time, in many years that he has worked, Mike has engaged in a number of projects, which includes the training space, which include the multitude of brands and some of the big companies in South Africa, the Bidvest of this world, Nando's, Alan Gray, Nissan, Emirates, National, or just to mention the few. His passion and experience lies in the creation of memorable and dedicated aligned learning journeys, the development of content of all types, and obviously to spend a number of hours supporting various clients that they deal with, and obviously looking at strategies of how to use technology as part of the platform for learning. And our topic for today is, what is it that one can consider whilst intending to transition to e-learning or online learning as it popularly known? Mike, thank you very much to be in our midst. Once again, we're looking forward to share with you your insight, knowledge, experience. And I do know that as we are all locked down, people are wondering what kind of strategies they can embark on to obviously continue to engage various stakeholders, to continue to learn, and obviously to continue to impart knowledge. For various stakeholders, it's different kind of services that they're looking to continue to engage or to continue to distribute in the market. So thank you to allow us to spend your time with you. But without further ado, I'd like to hand over to you to take us through the topic of the day.
Great. Well, firstly, can you all hear me clearly? And can you see my screen that's being shared at the moment? I hope so. I'd like to just extend some gratitude and thanks to the Sobeto team and to Stembiso for awarding me this opportunity and allowing me to provide some and impart some knowledge away. And I will get straight into it. I'm going to just turn off my video just in case my internet bandwidth is a bit slow, but I will continue to share my screen. So the topic of the day is what to consider while transitioning to online learning. So I would usually present these types of things face-to-face, although quite fortunate, I do have a Facebook for radio, and so this webinar certainly suits me. Also one of the reasons I've switched my camera off. And I'd like to start off by giving a little bit of background of my company, New Leaf Technologies. We have a really, really long-standing and strong alliance with Sobeto as a partner, and together we've actually accomplished quite a fair bit and dealt with various different clients in various different sectors. We are, as New Leaf, in the learning space. A few of you may have attended one of our recent e-learning endeavors. If not, I encourage you to join us on the next one. We have a couple of tiers to our business that include e-learning technologies, content development, and online learning solutions. We're an extremely passionate and dedicated team, and we partner closely with our clients to ensure that there is successful deployment of learning solutions. We really aspire to create memorable learning experiences that will inspire your employees, improve knowledge retention, and of course, productivity. We prefer really to partner with clients to ensure the solutions we provide make measurable contributions to business success. That means when you engage with our services or indeed with Sobeto services, your success really is our success. And we are with you every step of the way. We offer local support, advice, and training to make sure you get a measurable return on your investment. Our focus really is at all times to remain responsible and in tune with the needs of our clients and in tune with what's going on in this industry and just to align to the latest and greatest trends and make sure that we're utilizing best of breed technologies. So today I hope to share some tips on how to get your training online. Even if you are already online and you are offering courses online, these tips should help you improve. But I was hoping that we could make today a little bit more interactive. So just out of a matter of interest, has anyone here actually made a transition to digital learning already? Has anyone tried to do any online learning courses that they've done personally? If you don't mind just unmuting yourselves and just letting me know so I can get a gauge of what experience you might have. It would be great if I could ask to show hands, but I think it might be a bit impossible. All right, so I'm just going to move on. So who do we work with?
There is a facility to show hands.
It would be, I'll ask a couple of questions down the line. Feel free to engage. If not, it's okay. I think there is a chat facility towards the end. Yeah. So
if you don't mind, Mike, Mike, just sorry to distract you. If you don't mind, I think your voice and your sound is good. I think it would be nice to have your pick. So unless if it means that at a later stage we experience some difficulty in hearing, then you can turn it off. Do you mind? Yeah, sure. I think it's perfect.
No problem.
Yeah.
Okay. So who do we work with? Well, you'll note we have a very strong footprint in the financial sector with the likes of the Financial Services Conduct Authority, formerly FSB. We work with Allen Gray, Bidvest Bank, the Graduate Institute of Financial Services. But of course, we are involved in other sectors, both locally and abroad. Internationally, for instance, we have a client called Enoch, which is the Emirates National Oil Company. We also work with Carnival Cruise Lines in the USA, and of course Vado in the USA, as well as a few smaller clients that are scattered around Africa. So it should give you some comfort that we have helped a lot of our clients, and of course we've had to walk down the path with all of these entities to ensure the integrity of their IP, their user data, and of course ensure successful deployment of their courses, whether it be for their own internal companies or whether if it's a training company that's looking to transition from facilitating instructor-led training to going online. So training companies, corporates, we work in both sectors. So I think that really sums up briefly what I do. Before I start, if anyone has any questions, please just shoot them. I hope everyone can see my screen and my video okay. If there is any interruptions, please let me know and I'll go back and address the point that I'll try and make. So today, what we're going to cover really is this webinar will provide an overview of the tools, the trends, statistics, and the options available to you to move your courses online. So we'll start off by looking at some interesting online learning statistics, go through a few of the recent e-learning trends. We'll have a brief overview of looking at content development and e-learning authoring tools, and importantly, what to look out for in a learning platform. I'll also be sharing some insider tips on creating effective learning journeys. And finally, we'll close off with a question and answer session. So firstly, just to speak on a couple of e-learning statistics. So when it comes to education, whether it's school-aged, higher education institutions or company training, the vast majority, especially in this day and age, we're all in lockdown, we're starting to move online quite swiftly from a traditional face-to-face delivery mechanism to online learning. In my own immediate family, I've got a mother who's a teacher. I've got a father who's also in the e-learning industry. I've got a brother who's a teacher. And it's quite interesting to work together with family, and everyone is trying to do what they can in this time to help people take their classroom training and put it online. So the word e-learning was coined in 1998. That's fairly recent. It's been around for around 2 decades. So the market is quite new, although it's one of the most rapidly expanding markets in the world. Globally, the e-learning market will reach $325 billion US by the year 2025, and that's just a prediction. But since the year 2000, the e-learning global industry has grown by over 900%. 42% of companies report that e-learning has led to a vast increase in their own revenue. One sort of an outsider on these statistics is that video accounts for more than 80% of online activity globally. And I'll speak to video shortly. It's one of the content authoring tools that we'll be going through. Further to this, corporations can save anywhere from 50 to 70% of their training spend replacing an instructor-led trainer with e-learning methods. It's a scary thought when you think about the amount of facilitators and trainers and teachers there are out there, but it's also about enabling these individuals and allowing them to adapt and to grow their strengths so that they can deliver content online. Next up, I just want to show a quick video. Really, it's just to brief you guys what e-learning trends are. I then will go further into e-learning trends. I'm hoping that the audio will come through. If not, I will try to speak through it.
We can't hear the audio, Mike.
No audio, okay.
No audio, yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to be unpacking this a little bit further. There's audio in my headphones, so that's throwing me off. I'll unpack this a little bit further. This is just to give you an overview of some of the topics that we'll be covering today. So there is text on the screen, which I'm sure you can read. It's not a very long video. I think we've got another 20 or so seconds to go. Right, so that video basically just briefed all the topics, some of which that I want to highlight. You'll note in the top right corner here, there's a little code which I've shown here called emerging trends. So one of the emerging trends in learning is modeled against the SaaS industry, so learning as a service. It's provided as an end-to-end solution that encompasses managed services from analysis, implementation, content, support, all for a set monthly fee. Effectively, the person providing or the company providing a learning as a service becomes that learning partner for the client served. Because organizational training needs are constant and learning interventions are necessary to keep staff competent and businesses profitable, many organizations don't have the internal capacity needed to design and implement and create effective learning journeys. When you're managing multiple training solutions for multiple business units, it also becomes quite a challenge. This is why it's preferred in some instances to use a dedicated learning partner to assist you. So the last model provides a managed service for your organization that is aligned to your L&D strategy, and learning solutions are designed to meet your specific business objectives and empower your people. So together you map out your L&D journey and identify key deliverables and implementation plans with your organization requirements, and also looking at the external scope of that in terms of how you align to CETAs and other governing bodies. So it's really helping to develop these deliverables into tangible outcomes with a team of instructional designers, graphic designers, developers, and the likes, really to assist you for a set monthly fee rather than employing those people internally. And this is also to continue with that support. So it's evaluate post-delivery and keep that sort of ecosystem alive. So it's just an ecosystem of continuous improvement. And that's a really good way to ensure success. So it's also a reliance and access to expertise and the technology required to develop and align to those business goals and to your L&D strategies. Next up, we've got LXP. LXP stands for Learning Experience Platforms. If you've got any sort of prior knowledge to the e-learning industry, you probably would have heard of LXP, or at least an LMS, which is a learner management system. So people no longer search for courses or catalogs of courses the way that we are quite familiar with or used to. LXP systems really allow learners to learn in the flow of work. What's meant by LXP systems is that they've got a key set of capabilities, and it really places the learner at the center. So it's no longer a top-down driven process. Rather, it's learner-centric, and the learners actually decide to take control of their own learning paths. So you could imagine a platform, a learning platform, that lets you ask it, how do I enter an order? And it brings up content and shows you what to do. It focuses on delivering that sort of personalized learning experience and looks at momentary learning and just-in-time learning. So an LMS is typically a standalone platform for tracking e-learning activities. Although LMSs still occupy a critical place in the learning ecosystem, that ecosystem is expanding. And a lot of LMS companies are looking towards the LXP to extend learning opportunities and add some features and capabilities to their current systems. And things like your LTIs and your APIs, if it's a little bit too technical, LTI stands for Learning Tool Interoperability. It allows different systems to speak to each other, as well as APIs, which allow you to link learning systems to different systems, such as your HRMs, your CRMs, or human capital management systems, anything along those lines, so that you can really build a robust business ecosystem and align your training specifically to business strategy. So you are able to integrate sort of add-ons, if anyone is familiar with Zapier or tools, be it collaboration or performance management or any sort of talent management systems, AI chatbots, classroom management systems, all into one ecosystem where learners are placed in the middle of that and have access to the tools. But this becomes personal and they can have their own personal learning journey. So this means, quite frankly, that the market itself is becoming fairly complex. Almost all learning platforms are building specific learning experience designs fundamentally into their UI. And personally, I do think this is a really exciting space, although it is still maturing. As I said earlier, the industry is 20 years old and there's lots to be done, but there are some really awesome companies out there that are driving this really hard. And it's one of my passions to keep on top of the trends and to know what's out there. So if we live in a country like South Africa, you have to consider a mobile approach, really, because 90% of South Africans are going to learn online through their mobile. There's a lot of buzzwords that float around, like responsive or mobile friendly, and in our case, micro learning. But if there's one good reason to procure an LMS or an LXP for your business or training company, I would make sure it has an app. Mobile learning has matured and has seen a really steady increase in adoption. And it's got really intrinsic strengths. Anytime, anywhere, you can literally pick up your learning on the way to work, in the bathroom, wherever you are. So it comes as no surprise. This is kind of seen as the future of learning. And it provides control to the learners with an advantage of flexibility. It's accessible to learners in their workflow. They can get access to information at the moment of need. Some of the cool things that are available, which we've helped a couple of clients out with, is, restricting data usage for the end user. What I mean is using almost like a please call me for data, or what's known as reverse URL billing, so that it's a free to use platform for the end user. This is quite important, especially in South Africa, where data costs are quite high, and not everyone has access to or disposable income for data. So having the opportunity to have reverse billing really does go quite far, although a fair amount of the population does have access to smartphones. So what effect does this has on instructional design and content developers that produce e-learning content? In most cases, authoring tools do have responsive checkers. For instance, in Articulate, there's built-in responsivity checkers that allow you to see what content is going to be displayed like on different devices. It doesn't just happen at once. It allows you to emulate how content might look. But anyone who has a little bit of experience with web design will know that responsivity, it's not automatic, and image sizes and aspect ratios of images don't just remain the same depending on the device that you are looking at. It just makes you wonder why we're still using desktops in some fashion to produce mobile learning content. So it's just important to keep in mind who your target audience is and where they're going to be learning, what applications they're going to be learning on. And mobile first learning is a developing trend, but it's being very much highly adopted, especially in the region. And it's, of course, easy access to learners. Everyone's got their devices, and they can pick it up. But it is necessary to build it mobile first, and rather build it outwards, rather than start on a desktop or TV and bring it down. It just makes it a lot more difficult to bring it down. Whereas if you start with mobile first and have that in mind, it's a lot easier to scale up to bigger screen sizes. So content curation, this is quite an important one. There is countless bits of information available to you at the click of a button at your fingertips online. And content curation is an exercise to continually find, filter, and share relevant content to your learners. So allowing access to it all in one place. So it allows your organization to gather and curate content and make contextual learning material available for everyone's benefit. Content curation will help your learners experience content through forums, discussions, chats, peer-to-peer collaboration, and it really just drives that social learning ecosystem that is so needed in online learning. Online learning is you're doing it on your own. It can be a little bit socially inept because you're not really collaborating face to face. So you need to sort of inspire that sharing, and with the millennials of today, they love sharing content far and wide. So it's really just to nurture how that content is being allocated and put into learning paths so that it is relevant and in high context. So this also helps to reduce things like your development time, higher development costs, and it's time consuming to create content are all reasons why you should be looking towards curating content. So YouTube is a really great source for curation. I personally wish there was more recognition on how much you can actually learn through YouTube. You could have a YouTube degree, for instance, a BSc in applied cat videos. But there are loads of great sources for learning content, some of which are TED Talks, Udemy. Udemy is actually the biggest online MOOC, what's called a MOOC, which is a massive open online course. They've got 12 million users on it every year. It's quite a lot bigger than LinkedIn Learning, for instance. There's also things like Khan Academy, Open Sesame, to name a few, and of course, just a simple Google search. So if you look at the 7 steps that I've laid out for how to curate, I've mentioned one of them is a learning playlist. So I've got a question for all of you. How many of you have a degree? And is this degree still relevant to you today? Does this degree actually hold stature? Is it from the University of Cape Town or Harvard Business School, for instance? So the stamp of approval, the piece of paper that we chase through education, and I'm not really pushing down any institutions here, but I have a question that if you had a curated course from one of the world's best minds, say Elon Musk, for example, if you went through a learning journey of content that he curated, the books that he reads, the resources that he reads in the morning, and if he had to align that and put it into a step-by-step process for you to consume, and he gave you that stamp of authority or that certificate, would that actually stand up, and would it hold authority against some of the traditional institutions of learning and academics? So it's just a food for thought. With content curation, there are even some tools out there that are AI enabled, such as Wildfire, that allow you to curate content, summarize it, and then flip and put questions out in basically a couple of seconds. So the tools that are becoming available for content curation are really helping to make content available quite rapidly, and AI allows it to align to unique and personalized learning paths. So next I want to talk about AR, VR, MR, CR, augmented virtual mixed and cinematic reality. So I'm sure most of you own a car. Some of you might have a car with parking assist enabled. And if you do have such a feature, then you are already experiencing some form of augmented reality, because the car parking assistance uses augmented reality in order to map digital imagery with the real world. So AR, VR, MR, and CR are really acknowledged as being superb approaches to provide highly immersive learning experiences. And this has been a hot topic for a few years, but things like price, substantial lead time in terms of how long it takes to actually develop short learning contents, have been some limiting factors and probably limited the wider usage. Of course, having the hardware, VR goggles and things is also a limitation. But there are limited cases that justify these investments. And with authoring tools and providers like Adobe, and I've listed another one down there, Unity, getting into these sorts of virtual reality solutions, the price points have dropped. In fact, Unity is a free tool. It doesn't cost you anything to produce. The 360 cameras of the world are coming down. They actually cost less than your typical DSLR camera these days. So the costs are rapidly becoming more and more affordable. Things like your Google Cardboards and other goggles that you can buy off Takealot, for instance, you can get them for a couple of $100 and really just augment what your learners are doing and make it fun and engaging. So costs are dropping. There is a bit of a shorter development time, and it provides a lot of creative applications for many, many different types of learning practically. Next up is artificial intelligence, machine learning, or intelligence augmentation. So AI can take a much broader set of learning variables and quickly turn them into personalized learning paths. So using AI in learning is one trend that you should really watch out for, because AI can facilitate the creation of highly customized learning paths by analyzing the data it collects. This data can then be used to understand the learner's interests, proficiency, and recommend further learning assets that may not, the learners may not be aware of, and potentially do this better than a teacher. So personalized learning will not only engage with the learner better, but it will also help the L&D team and the trainers just gain impact and see a little bit of the metrics involved. So they can filter this in many ways, like adaptive learning. We've got a product called a New Spring that Subetu and ourselves sell, which has got a built-in AI algorithm to help personalize those learning journeys. But things like chatbots are starting to become a little bit more commonplace. There's a couple of free AI chatbots available, but it's really quite simple to set up. At the moment, AI still requires some human intervention, but the more these tools evolve, the more and more autonomous they'll become. So next up, I just want to go through a quick overview of the types of content development tools you should consider when you want to make e-learning content. So firstly, you're going to need some pretty good audio. On the screen, there's a couple of DAWs. I'm sure some of you might not know what a DAW stands for, but it actually stands for Digital Audio Workstation. So the importance of a good DAW can't really be understated. It is to a voiceover artist as a canvas is to a visual artist. So at the most fundamental level, what a DAW does is facilitate the recording of an array of sources, microphones, your voice, music, and it allows you to edit the ums and ahs out, and of course get a high quality narration that can sit over your learning content. And this can be uploaded as MP3s or WAVs. And really, this is a tool that you're going to need to spice up your content with narration. So some of the important things to consider is how long it takes to learn these tools, if there is a cost associated to it. So Audacity, in fact, is a free tool. Pro Tools First is also a free tool, but also consider the flow of work. So is it worthwhile you spending the time and effort to obviously announce words and practice your articulation? Maybe you haven't got the best voiceover voice. Maybe it's time to outsource that and get some better quality. So, but here's some tips on recording good audio. Obviously, you need to record in a quiet space. One quiet space that I found a while back when I didn't have a studio was a car. The car is soundproofed, and it's a really good place to do audio recordings. Even if you're just using your phone to do an audio recording, you can still get pretty good quality sitting inside your car. Of course, remove ambient noise, sounds from a fan or a light bulb, or you might hear I've got a heater on in the background that might be bugging some of you. Control your microphone distance. Use cue cards or a screen to prompt to your voiceover so that you're not umming and ahhing, because that really just helps you with editing. You don't want to spend too much time editing. You want to try and get it right in the recording. Avoid popping and sibilance. So when you're too close to a microphone, you might get a boominess. If you're too far away, you might get sibilance, which is basically the high end of audio. Control your breathing and templatize a lot of your workflow so that you can literally sit down, record, export, and off you go. You can make it really quick. It's much better to use an external microphone and try and practice your diction and your enunciation so that you have a nice, clear sounding narrated voiceover. And it's, you know, maybe not the case for everyone, but try to invest in a decent microphone or external sound card. Laptop audio isn't typically the best. Phones generally have better microphones, so it would be useful using your phone in a car just to start things off. We also have studios available where you are welcome to make use of our studios for voiceovers. We do book it out. Obviously, during lockdown, it's a bit impossible, but we do have the facilities available. Next, we're going to look at something called NLEs, or non-linear editors. So non-destructive editing is really a form of where you take video content, original content that's not altered, and you edit it and alter the contents to align. So it allows you to make changes to media, like making cuts or speed adjustments, add cinematic looks without overwriting the original content. So not like in the old days where you had to cut a piece of film or tape, and that was kind of the end of your video. If you messed it up, there's no undo button. So what it does allow is a lot of creative freedom. And one thing I must point out with video is, you heard earlier that around 80% of all the content consumed online is video. It's an important factor to note, and it's one of the easiest forms to get learning out. If you're used to conducting or facilitating lessons in a classroom, you can get your phone out and record your classroom session. That is really the first step to getting your courses online. Video creation costs are going down. It's easy, it's quick. Data costs are going down, apparently. I think they came down by 30%. I think it could go down a little bit further. Of course, 5G networks are rolling out quite soon. I'm not too sure they do cause COVID-19, but it does allow for higher streaming quality. So just that quality is really something when it comes to learning. You want learners to have the best experience while learning. An important thing to note is really you want to entertain as well as educate. So edutain the learner, and video is a really good way to do that, because you do get better engagement. You can have things like interactive videos and searchable videos, as well as a real treat for things like blended learning, where if you do have a classroom session or a webinar that's 2 hours long, take that webinar and make it searchable so that when users engage with it, they're able to quickly find information that's relevant to them in the time of need. So some of the tools I've noted down here, again, Adobe, very good across the board. We've got Premiere Pro, Final Cut. Camtasia is a very good one for e-learning, as well as Panopto. Panopto allows you to simulate some of those videos and also make them searchable. DaVinci is a really great tool for if you don't want to spend any money and you need a free video editing tool. Some of the things you need to consider, again, how long it's going to take you to learn these tools. What are the costs involved? How does it tie in with your workflow? Is it something you should outsource? It is fairly time consuming. You should be worried about quality. I see a lot of people not putting quality first, and I must say that quality always makes for a better learning uptake. And of course, file size. People are going to be consuming this on mobile data, for instance, so the higher the file size, the more it costs the end user. So it's just an important factor to take note of. So 10 tips in creating better e-learning videos. Bite size is best. Keep it short and simple. Compress it for mobile viewing. Again, keeping those data costs down. Invest in some quality editing software. That doesn't mean you have to fork out a lot of money. You can use something like, there's loads of tools that DaVinci Resolve. It's a free one. Premiere Pro isn't that expensive. And then show skills. So people learn through what's called VAK, which is VAK, which is visually, through auditory, or kinesthetically, or indeed tactile. So show actions, show skills. Videos are quite boring in the case where you're watching my face and I'm presenting, but if it's practical and I'm showing you how to kick a ball, it might be a little bit more entertaining. So do show those actions. Always start with a script and a story map, so it doesn't seem too off the cuff. You can include interactive elements, so making questions appear during videos so that learners can actually answer them on the video itself. You can also have node-based videos, where I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Bandersnatch on Netflix, that allow you to choose different parts for the videos. Very possible. It's not entirely difficult to manage or do. I really think that videos need to be driven by story or have some sort of a narrative to make it a little bit more engaging. Humor goes a long way to keep learners locked in. Use audio to immerse and foster that emotional connection. So music can be a really good thing if you want to drive home a scary point, put some scary music in. Pair e-learning videos with hands-on online training activities, and ignite your creative spark without compromising practicality. So, look at different camera angles, look at the lighting, get a little bit creative, and your learners will appreciate that you've had a little bit of fun in creating those. Next up, animation tools, what to look out for. So there's a few tools online, such as Vyond, formerly known as Go Animate. This is something that you see time and time again on e-learning courses. I find it personally a little bit wrong, because it's the same style of video, and I think learners are frankly quite sick of seeing things like your Go Animates, because the characters are all the same. I'm sure you might have seen some yourself, but there are alternatives for those online animation tools. So Animaker is quite a good one, PowerToons is quite a good one, but there's countless online. Of course, there are other tools that allow you to make animations offline, such as Blender, which is a great free tool, but with a really high learning curve. It'll probably take you 6 months to 2 years to get quite good at that. Cinema 4D and After Effects, also very well-known ones. So things to consider with animation. Of course, you can animate in PowerPoint. It doesn't have to be too static. But consider the learning curve it takes to learn some of these tools. Obviously, your Powtoons and your Beyond, you know, it takes you less than a couple of hours to get up to speed because they are designed in that manner, but you're not going to get the same quality out of them as in After Effects or Cinema 4D. So consider the costs. Some of these animation tools can fetch 80,000 Rand a year. They get really expensive, but of course, some of them are completely free, like Blender. Also consider if this is something that aligns to your strengths, because you're also going to have to be quite good at things like graphic design. It's a very easy thing to outsource. There's loads of animation studios in the country. There's even things like Fiverr, where you can outsource animations to all people from all around the world at fairly affordable rates. And you're likely to get a much better quality and time to output. Again, file size, just keep note in terms of end users and them using their own mobile data. So how to use animations effectively? Many e-learning professionals avoid animations because it's difficult to make, and they feel it might detract from the value of the e-learning course or diminish its credibility. However, this couldn't be further from the truth, particularly if you invest enough time and effort into designing your content and have animations that have humor and entertainment to your learning experience, as well as create more positive e-learning conditions. They make it more interactive and engaging. One of the most convincing arguments for including animations in your e-learning strategy is that they make for an ideal bite-sized learning activity. Online learners are able to play, pause, and rewatch the e-learning animations whenever they like, even if that happens when they are, on their daily commute, sitting in the bus or in the break room. It's quick and easy, and it really just drives home key points effectively. So make the animations easily digestible. It simplifies quite a lot of complex ideas, because if you put things down into text, a learner might not engage with that, and they might decide not even to read that. So if you put it into a 2-minute animation, at least they can get the gist of it. For example, you could have employees seeing cartoons of how to perform work-related processes or interact with the customer, for instance. So choose elements that evoke the right emotion. Focus on one learning character or topic at a time. You don't need to make a Disney film. It doesn't need to be 10 minutes long. Make it short and justify it to one singular topic or point of learning. Encourage online learners to interact with learning animations. So you can couple animations with interactions, which makes it really fun because you can engage in the content with more than just your eyes and your ears. So always pair visuals with audio, and I would strengthen that further by pair that with some interactions, and you've pretty much got a really sought after e-learning experience for your learners. Track things like your viewing time and interactions so you can see how learners are engaging with content. Make it a story, add some humor, and again, it doesn't have to be Disney. It could be some simple PowerPoint animations. Next up, I think we'll start getting into the meat of this presentation now, in terms of e-learning specific authoring tools. So there are thousands of e-learning authoring tools. Some of the more well-known are Articulate, Captivate, iSpring, Elucidat, Lectora, Domino, H5P. H5P is a particularly good one because it is free and it allows you to integrate to most LMS systems. Quite a few LMS systems or learning experience systems also have built-in authoring tools, which allow you to make content inside the software that you're going to be delivering content to. Typically, most in the traditional sense, e-learning content usually revolves around SCORM. So SCORM stands for Shareable Content Object Reference Model. And SCORM was actually designed by the United States military. And it's a really common e-learning file type that allows you to take content from one system and put it in another, and allows you to track any sort of metrics and analytics behind what learners are doing and how much time they're spending. And it allows you to also ask questions embedded into those SCORM files. So e-learning must-haves and some features that you should consider and look out for. So SCORM systems are based on the smallest measurable unit. It could be a single topic or a complete e-learning chapter, but it has its own tag in your learning management system, meaning you can monitor it individually. It could be a self-assessment quiz, simulation exercise, but really you need something, a tool that tracks your activities and tracks what your learners are doing. So regardless of whether the employee or training participants use it online or offline, on a mobile or on a desktop, you kind of need to check that data so that you can improve on your content. So you want to see when and possibly where they studied, how long did it take, how many repeats did they need before they got a question right. And your e-learning authoring tool needs these kind of metrics so that it can collect and analyze this data. It's going to help you improve your online training courses efficacies, and you're going to have to monitor this. So include a variety of interactive activities. So what makes a good e-learning course is that they're engaging and fun. They require direct and active participation from online learners in order to cater for employee training participants with different learning preferences. It helps to offer the same online training content in multimedia, so text, audio, video, graphics, novels. Ensure that your e-learning authoring tools have the capacity to build all of these formats, so a wide variety of media types to keep your learners engaged. What we hate as online learning professionals is the next button, and learners are just basically reading a Word document online. That's not online learning. You could have sent them an email. So make sure it supports a host of different media types and make use of those media types and mix and blend and mix and mash different medias to different learning topics. So in terms of support, asset libraries, that can be very useful. Things like your Shutterstocks and your 123RFs, any sort of asset libraries that include templates that allow you to really create content quite quickly is also a good thing to look out for with e-learning, because you don't want to sit there for 3 or 4 hours designing one infographic when there might be a resource available online that you can download and customize. So having templates, Articulate is a really good one for that, because they've got lots of activities that are already pre-designed. You just simply have to populate them with some text, replace some of the graphics and the audio, and you can create courses fairly rapidly. Some of the learning tools themselves have those built-in authoring tools and have image banks and stock videos and things like that. Of course, all LMSs really do is facilitate online learning. So it's really good to have inspection tools. So being able to track, again, activities, but also be able to assess effectively online. So there are tools available such as proctoring, which make use of the webcam and the microphones on your laptop to ensure that the individual that's actually taking an online assessment or exam is the person that they say they are. And if, for instance, they try and cheat and open a new tab, the system will actually flag that automatically and let the instructor or the facilitator or administrator of the systems know that this individual is cheating. We've actually done this with a client called the CAA, the Civil Aviation Authority, and probably one of the first in the country to do so. But pilots that fly for SAA and Emirates and a number of different airline companies that do their tests through the CAA have to do online assessments to renew their pilot's license, and they do that through our platform with proctoring. So it's a little bit scary to think about that, but their licenses are actually issued from our platform. So how learning can tie into different strategies of business is quite interesting as well. So you have to consider the various types of platforms that are available as well. A learning management system, it's just good for tracking things like attendance, registrations, dates, scores, results, but it's not the best in delivering courses. Learning experience platforms are good at delivering learning experiences and good at delivering learning content. And then your CMS, which stands for Content Management Systems, it's basically just a content warehouse that allows you to link into different things like your website, where learners can log into your website and start on there. So a WordPress site, for instance. Make sure that the platform that you look into has a very intuitive UI. Some of these platforms are very difficult to understand and manage. So, you know, good UI just makes it easy and a lot simpler to get onboarded and to create courses quite quickly. Make sure that the platforms have responsive delivery. So, you know, one of the things to look out for is make sure it's got a mobile app, test it out on a few different devices, test it on a TV, on a laptop, on a phone, and see what it looks like. Because not all platforms are that responsive and they don't behave that well on different devices. Make sure that you have multiple publishing options. So what I mean by publishing options are when you come to authoring content, typically you'd author it in a platform, and one of the things that you don't want to be authoring on today is things like Flash, because that's going to be out of the equation at the end of the year. Flash is just not being supported anymore. So you don't really want to buy a platform that is still authoring in Flash. You probably want to be looking out for SCORM, TinCan, XAPI, HTML5, those sorts of things, so that, you know, it's sort of future-proof for the next foreseeable 5-10 years, where something like Flash, it's not going to work. So make sure that there is flexibility into how you can plug it into different systems. So you're looking at learning ecosystems, how you can integrate to other authoring tools, plugins, different systems like your HRMs or your CRMs. Definitely look, if you can, brand and white label it. Another thing to look out for in that regard in terms of branding is things like subtenancy. So if you're a training company and you deliver training to 4 or 5 different clients, each one of those clients can have their own bespoke look and feel. So each client themselves becomes a tenant of your platform. Your courses are delivered through the platform, but in their own branding. It's quite nice. Import features are really important, especially if you are dealing with huge numbers of learners or courses. It's not very fun adding individual learners one by one when you've got 10,000 learners to add. So if you've got import features which allow you to import thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of learners or courses or content, make sure it has that capacity of import and of course export. Because if you go from one system to the other and you need to transfer that historic data to a new platform, it can be a big headache. Make sure it has rapid e-learning authoring capacity. So that's a bit of a buzzword, but really what it is allowing you the flexibility to get and deliver courses quickly and effectively. Rapid e-learning isn't the high-end Disney type of e-learning with lots of animations. It's something that you can create quickly and get to your learners in a matter of hours. Mixed media magic, just going back on the types of files that you can use with a given system. It should cover everything from PowerPoint to SCORM to HTML, and it should actually cover most media types that you throw at it. Another important functionality to consider with a platform is the collaboration experience or social learning. So things like notifications or how learners can interact with each other, ask facilitators or teachers questions, and what is that collaborative function? How does it work on a platform? So it's just an important thing to consider. So next up, what I want to look at is a little bit more of how to go about coming up with a learning strategy. This is a fairly simple approach, but I feel it does work. So firstly, you need to ask the questions that you have. What are your current pain points? What decisions need to be made? What information is needed? Where can you start to obtain that information? Are you going to analyze? What's the desired outcome? And essentially work backwards in how you formulate a plan. So think about who the stakeholders are. Of course, you always have to keep the learner in mind, but who are you going to be reporting to? What sort of metrics do you want to see out of the report? Whose knowledge are you going to be transferring? Is that knowledge available in raw format? Is it on a PowerPoint? Is it in classroom materials or a Word document? Or is it stuck inside someone's head, and how are you going to extract and formulate the delivery plan. So you need to think about getting those results into a format that makes sense to you and especially to your stakeholders. So you should be doing this at the planning stage. It's important to have insight right up front to avoid pitfalls later. So if you are looking at conducting things like CETA training, make sure that the product that you decide to use aligns to how CETAs like to see their reports and how their moderators like to see the reports. If you've got other governing bodies, or if you've got anything, even if you are an L&D professional and you need to send a report to your boss on Mondays, just make sure that you've got the right information up front so that you can align it to the end goal. So with learning analytics, you can really start to answer pressing questions and where you can accurately use your training budget, how to invest more intelligently in the types of e-learning assets that you can create. And you need to know, how your supervisors or training facilitators operate on a platform. So you can address these sorts of performance issues and pick up on knowledge shortfalls, skills gaps, so that you can quickly make decisions to align content to facilitate those knowledge gaps. Most importantly, your training has to lead to an individual's performance, to an employee's performance. So how do you do that? That's a tough question to ask, but it's some of the questions that you need to consider before making the transition to go online. So this graphic is basically what a learning journey might look like. So you might start off a learning journey with a quiz on basic concepts around what that topic is. So it could be a baseline assessment, and you might need to map that to different learning objectives. You might have in a course 10 learning objectives or 3, objective A, B, and C. But where personalized and adaptive learning comes into place is that if you've got learner 1 is good at objective A and B, but learner 2 is good at objective A and C, those guys need to concentrate on the content where they are less familiar with. So rather than going through a one-size-fits-all classroom-based approach, let them focus on the areas that they don't understand more. So with adaptive, AI-driven or personalized learning platforms, you can really shorten your learning time for learners. We actually helped a bank, Bidvest Bank, save quite a huge sum of money on compliance training. Previously, they used to take 2 or 3 days per employee to do compliance training year after year. We managed to bring that down to 4 hours, and they could do it outside of the classroom in their own time. So if you think about the cost of productivity, or if you're outside of the office for 2 or 3 days, there is a cost associated to that, not to mention the external costs like a venue or travel or facilitator costs. So online learning is a really good way to bring down some of those costs. So just to speak back to the graphic again, so we'd map on basic concepts, and based on how that individual has done, he might have to go into a classroom or hands-on training because he doesn't actually understand the content well enough, and he needs that sort of face-to-face intervention. But what the facilitator will have is an idea on how well they did here. So they'll have those metrics in place so that they can have a more personalized experience in the classroom. Other individuals might go on and they'll just need a product animation or some kind of e-learning content. As this progresses, really what you're looking at is 3 different tiers in this particular instance. So we're looking at sort of an awareness of the topic, a little bit more of an understanding, and then they need to apply their knowledge. So these sorts of routes don't have to be one size fits all. They can be personal, and depending on what a learner does will depend on their sort of journey. So you can include things like software simulations or put them into a sandbox challenge. So if you're an insurance company and you're trying to help with the call center training, maybe it's product information that they need to know, but when they're on the call, they need to first ascertain what are the client's needs, what are their budgets, and then they need to go and actually put that order into their software. So it's no good if they go and input this onto something that's live, where that can actually have real repercussions, business repercussions, if a learner or trainer that's only 6 weeks into induction starts playing on a real life software and some mistakes are made, that's not so good. So put them into a sandbox challenge where they can fail. And online learning is a good place to fail because you can do it over and over and over again, and that's really how you learn. Further to this, maybe they go on and they do some scenario-based activities, and this is now looking at how they comprehend the information. So now they understand in the call center application, they understand the product, they understand what the client's needs are, they understand the software that they need to input the information onto. So we can then put that into a scenario-based activity where a question is asked, this client has X, Y, and Z need. You know X, Y, and Z products, you know the software, now go and apply that knowledge and then track that. There's literally so much choice available when it comes to online learning. It's really how you picture that learning journey that starts to make sense. So e-learning needs to make an impact. And this chart focuses on analytics within the corporate L&D domain. So here you can see that only 5% of organizations are classified as high performing, which means that they're able to use data in such a way that they can accurately gauge the impact of training. When processed right, this can give us tremendous insights on how learners learn, the impact of training on skills, and the impact on business, and eventually your return on investment determination. So reports are the types of things that your stakeholders or bosses or governing bodies want to see. And what they really want to see is this training making an impact on business? Is it measurable? Can I actually see a return on investment? And has it helped, for one, the learners do their jobs better, or the school students learn better or more effectively? And has it helped the bottom line? Has it actually driven up the bottom line? So if this data doesn't look that encouraging, you don't need to worry, because there is plans available that can get you started on the right foot, and it's not too difficult. It really boils down to how you utilize analytics that are made available to you through your learning platforms. So this is quite a dense slide, but don't stress, I'll unpack it a little bit. So I'm sure all of you by now would have heard of the term big data. And as you know, data allows you to make informed, mostly factual decisions. So this graph shows classification levels of analytics in organizations on a maturity scale based on the types of actions they perform. So on the left, you'll see what's called operational maturity. In this, most reporting is confined to a few sets of canned reports or off-the-shelf sort of reports, out-the-box reports, you could call it. So this might be something like how many times has a learner logged on this month, or how many learners have passed this course this year. And typically, it's only looked at through one platform and through one lens. It doesn't really consider all the other information that is actually available to that organization. So as we move on to the right, we have organizations that start to use data at a more strategic level. This helps to create more informed decisions, and organizations might realize or be aware of data lying in different systems, such as the CRMs, HRMs, and anything of those sorts of likes. And they've actually made progress in integrating some of these platforms to arrive at a more holistic view of what's going on in their organization. Is it actually making an impact? Are they actually selling courses to the right audience? So on the far right now, you've got the highest level of analytics. This is at a transformational maturity. Now you actually have figured out ways of making data work for you, and you can start looking at past trends and start to model futures and start looking at behavioral predictability. So if you look at something like predictive text, it becomes more and more accurate the more you engage with it. So this is a tough stage to reach because it requires a tremendous amount of effort to accumulate a model that encapsulates all the major variables in a business environment. But this analysis can be used to understand learner behavior, the way they want to learn, the learning paths that they choose, and how to update existing training delivery mechanisms. These cues can be used to create even more effective learning paths and more effective courses. It also looks at enabling learners to learn, practice, and obtain feedback and remediation a lot more so. So where I think it'll become very exciting in the future is machine learning systems will start to automate the decision-making process for you. So dynamic, automated, data-driven decision-making and machine action. So based on this information, systems will just align to what's the best usage for this particular thing. So I quickly want to jump out of my presentation and show you an example of what I'm talking about. Can you all still see my screen? I assume. Okay, so what we've got here is what we like to call a training intelligence dashboard. And this dashboard gives you quite a lot of insight as to what your learners are doing. So for instance, some of the things that I mentioned that aren't very transformative are how many logins you've got and what's the total duration of logins on the system in a given time frame. But what you can also see is most productive staff. So that might be a teacher, and you can see Melody is being really productive, or who your most productive learner is. Where it gets a little bit more interesting is if we just jump into something like subscriptions. Now we've got a couple of learners here. So we'll look at Lara Null. We can see her completion rate is 57% within a given time frame, right? And we can see when she started, how long it took her, when she completed, and we can actually drill down through this learner to find out a little bit more. Completed, not taken, still trying. And these sorts of things can really become quite useful. Where I think it is fairly interesting is if you look at things like time preferences. And this is just one example of a training intelligence report. But what I find quite interesting about this is you can look at things like preferred learning day variances and preferred learning time variances. So you can see that in this case, in this school, a lot of learners are spending time online doing their online courses on Thursdays. And a lot of them are doing it at 8 to 10. So if you're an online facilitator or trying to teach online, you'd know that the best time to communicate with your learners is on Thursdays at 8 to 10. That's quite a useful bit of information. So when you tie this up to things like personalized learning paths, this platform can basically start to make decisions on your behalf. Let me just jump back into the presentation. Okay, so if there's one thing I'd like you guys to take away from this webinar, always keep the learner in mind. There's lots and lots and lots of tools available out there to support you. The learning arena is becoming quite complex, but at the same time, also quite simple. It's never been easier to get your courses online than ever before. And if you think about it, things like data costs and the ease of which you get courses online, the worst it's ever going to be is right now. It will only improve. So the concept of information and knowledge transfer and upskilling will always remain the same. But these concepts need to adapt to use these technological advancements in in due course. And I think due course is right now. Amidst a lockdown like this, you can't conduct training in the classroom. And I can guarantee you that your classroom training isn't effective as online in all cases. I know a few experiences when I've done a bit of training and facilitated not feeling very well, and I don't actually give the learners the best experience. So with online learning, you can ensure learners have the same experience, and it can be of really high quality every single time. So you should be mindful to create relevant and inspirational learning journeys that really equip your learners and help them improve. Make it fun, make it engaging, keep it fit for purpose and contextual. Really have a look at the data that these tools allow you to have, and align your learning strategies to that so that you can create more and more, more effective learning journeys. So our business really believes in growing people, and so should you. Nurturing your employees should be part of your business culture, and it should be the backbone for business in the business development and continuity. So I'd just like to thank you all for watching. I think we'll now be taking questions. I've got my details up on screen, and you can reach out to Sabetu as well.